The crystal chandeliers of Romano's fine dining cast golden light across marble floors as baby Sophie's piercing cries echoed to the elegant restaurant. Marcus Davidson, CEO of Davidson Tech Empire, held his 6-month-old daughter awkwardly in his arms, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air conditioning. His business suit, worth more than most people's monthly salary, was wrinkled from trying every position possible to calm the screaming child. "This is completely unacceptable," Marcus shouted over the baby's wails, his voice carrying across the restaurant like thunder. Every table had turned to stare at the billionaire who usually commanded respect with just his presence. Tonight, however, he looked helpless and desperate. "Where's your manager? I need someone who can handle the situation immediately." The German investors at his table exchanged uncomfortable glances, checking their expensive watches. This was supposed to be the dinner that sealed a $75 million software deal with Munich Technologies, the contract that would expand Davidson Tech into European markets. Sophie had been crying for nearly an hour straight, turning what should have been Marcus's greatest business triumph into his worst nightmare. He had tried everything his wealth could buy. 3 different high-end baby bottles filled with imported formula, designer toys that cost more than a car, and he had even offered to pay other customers to switch tables so the baby wouldn't disturb them. Nothing worked. The child seemed determined to destroy his most important business deal ever. "Mr. Davidson," whispered the restaurant manager nervously, approaching the table with careful steps. "We have contacted 4 professional nannies from the most expensive agency in the city, but none of them could calm her down either." The manager's hand shook slightly as he spoke. Marcus Davidson was known throughout the business world for his explosive temper when things didn't go his way. The German investors were starting to look frustrated, their diplomatic smiles fading into expressions of barely hidden annoyance. From across the restaurant, Angela Rodriguez watched the scene unfold with growing concern. The 38-year-old waitress had been working at Romano's for 8 years, and she had never seen a baby cry with such intensity for so long. Angela had raised 3 children of her own as a single mother, working double shifts to pay for their education and basic needs. She recognized the signs of a baby who wasn't just fussy but was genuinely distressed about something specific. Angela's heart ached as she watched Marcus struggle with his daughter. Despite his wealth and power, he looked like any frightened parent who didn't know how to help their child. She had dealt with similar situations many times, both with her own children and with other families at the restaurant. But she also knew her place in this fancy establishment. She was just a waitress, and Marcus Davidson was one of their most important customers, someone who spent thousands of dollars every month on business dinners. Still, Angela couldn't just stand by and watch a baby suffer. She approached Marcus's table slowly, her uniform simple and clean, but clearly marking her as someone from a different social class than the wealthy customers surrounding her. "Excuse me, Mr. Davidson," she said quietly, trying not to interrupt the tense conversation with the German investors. "I might be able to help with your daughter." Marcus looked up at Angela with surprise and irritation. His eyes moved up and down her figure, taking in her simple uniform and her humble appearance. "You," he said with a cruel laugh that made several nearby tables turn to look. "Listen, I've already paid for the most expensive baby experts in the city. I don't need advice from—" He paused, his eyes narrowing as he looked at her more closely. "From someone like you. This is a serious business situation, not a charity case." The words hit Angela like a physical blow, but she kept her expression calm and professional. She had faced prejudice many times in her life, and she had learned to handle it with dignity. "I understand, sir. I just thought that maybe—" She began, but Marcus cut her off with an impatient wave of his hand. "No, no, no," Marcus said loudly, making sure his voice carried to the surrounding tables. "I'm paying thousands of dollars for this dinner, and I expect professional solutions, not amateur suggestions from the help. Please just focus on bringing our food and let the adults handle the situation." His tone was dismissive and cruel, designed to put Angela back in what he considered her proper place. Angela stepped back, her cheeks burning with humiliation, but she didn't give up completely. She retreated to a position where she could still observe the situation while staying out of Marcus's direct line of sight. From her years of experience with children, She could see that baby Sophie wasn't just crying randomly. The child's movements and the pattern of her cries suggested something very specific was bothering her, something that all the expensive experts had missed. At the back corner of the restaurant, sitting at a small table usually reserved for staff during their breaks, 12-year-old Maya Rodriguez was quietly doing her homework. It was a Friday evening, and the babysitter had canceled at the last minute, forcing Angela to bring her daughter to work. Maya had promised to stay invisible and quiet, working on her advanced mathematics problems while her mother finished her shift. The girl had been watching the entire drama unfold with growing interest, her sharp mind analyzing the situation with mathematical precision. Maya was not an ordinary 12-year-old. She had been identified as gifted at age 7 and had been taking college-level courses online for the past 2 years. While other children her age were playing video games or watching cartoons, Maya spent her free time reading scientific journals and solving complex equations that challenged even university students. She had a particular interest in behavioral psychology and human interaction patterns, subjects that helped her understand why people acted the way they did. As Maya watched Marcus Davidson struggle with his crying baby, she noticed details that the adults had completely overlooked. The way he held Sophie was creating pressure on her tiny spine. The bright lights of the chandelier were directly in the baby's eyes. The loud conversation and clinking of silverware was overwhelming her sensitive hearing. But most importantly, Maya could see that Sophie's crying pattern matched exactly the symptoms of infant gas pain, something that could be relieved with the right positioning and gentle pressure on specific points. Maya had learned about infant care not from expensive books or professional courses, but from helping her mother care for her younger cousins and from reading medical journals at the public library. Her mathematical mind had turned childcare into a science, analyzing patterns and causes rather than just hoping for solutions. She could see exactly what Sophie needed, and she knew her mother had the experience to help. If only Marcus Davidson would put aside his prejudice long enough to listen. The German investors were becoming increasingly frustrated with the situation. "Mr. Davidson," said the lead investor, Dr. Mueller, in heavily accented English, "perhaps we should reschedule this meeting for a time when you can focus properly on business matters." The man's tone was polite but firm, and Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. This deal represented everything he had worked toward for the past 3 years. Losing it because of a crying baby would be the most expensive failure of his entire career. "Please, just give me a few more minutes," Marcus pleaded, his usual commanding presence cracking under the pressure. "I'm sure we can resolve the situation quickly." But even as he spoke, Sophie's cries seemed to grow louder and more desperate. The baby's face was red from crying, and she was clearly exhausted but unable to find relief from whatever was bothering her. Maya made a decision that would change everything. She carefully closed her calculus textbook, put away her notes on quantum physics, and walked slowly toward Marcus's table. Her mother was busy serving other customers and didn't notice as Maya approached the powerful businessman who had just humiliated Angela so publicly. Maya's steps were confident and purposeful, her young face showing a maturity that seemed far beyond her 12 years. "Excuse me, sir," Maya said politely, her voice clear and calm despite the chaos around her. "I think I know what's wrong with your baby, and I believe I can help her." Her words cut through the noise of Sophie's crying like a knife, and suddenly everyone at the table was looking at this small black girl who had appeared out of nowhere. Marcus stared at Maya in complete shock. Where had this child come from? Why was she in this expensive restaurant during business hours? And how dare she interrupt his important meeting with such a ridiculous claim? "Little girl," he said with barely controlled anger, "this is not a playground. Where are your parents? You shouldn't be bothering adult customers with your games." Maya remained perfectly calm, her hands clasped behind her back as she looked directly into Marcus's eyes without fear. "My mother is Angela Rodriguez, one of your waitresses. And this isn't a game, sir. Your daughter is suffering from what appears to be trapped gas in her digestive system, combined with overstimulation from environmental factors. The position you're holding her in is actually making both problems worse." The entire table fell silent. Dr. Mueller and his colleagues exchanged surprised glances at this articulate young girl who spoke with the confidence of a medical professional. Marcus felt his jaw drop as he processed what Maya had just said. A 12-year-old was giving him a medical diagnosis of his daughter's condition? "Are you seriously suggesting," Marcus said slowly, his voice dripping with disbelief and contempt, "that I should trust a medical opinion of a child? A child who shouldn't even be in this restaurant in the first place?" He looked around the table as if expecting the German investors to share his outrage at this interruption. But Dr. Mueller was studying Maya with growing curiosity. As a father of 4 children himself, he had experienced similar situations many times. "Young lady," he said kindly in his German accent, "what makes you think you understand what the baby needs?" Maya smiled slightly, recognizing that at least one adult was willing to listen to her reasoning. "I've been observing the situation for the past hour, sir. Baby Sophie's crying pattern shows a consistent rhythm that indicates digestive distress rather than general fussiness. Additionally, Mr. Davidson is holding her in a position that puts pressure on her lower abdomen, which would increase any gas pain she might be experiencing. The bright lighting and loud environment are also causing sensory overload, which prevents her from relaxing enough for her digestive system to function properly." Marcus felt his face turning red with embarrassment and anger. How dare this little girl lecture him about his own daughter in front of his most important business partners? "This is absolutely ridiculous," he exploded, his voice echoing to the restaurant. "I am not going to take parenting advice from some random child, especially not in front of my business associates." Maya remained completely calm in the face of Marcus's outburst. Her mathematical mind had calculated this reaction and prepared for it. "Sir, I understand your skepticism, but your daughter has been crying for over an hour, and nothing you've tried has worked. What do you have to lose by letting me try a different approach? If I'm wrong, you'll be in exactly the same situation you're in now. If I'm right, your daughter will be comfortable and your business dinner can continue successfully." The logic was so simple and clear that even Marcus had to admit it made sense, though he hated that it came from a 12-year-old girl. Dr. Mueller leaned forward with interest. As a scientist himself, he appreciated logical thinking regardless of where it came from. "The child makes a valid point, Mr. Davidson. Perhaps we could allow her to demonstrate her theory." Marcus felt trapped between his prejudice and his desperation. Every minute that passed with Sophie crying was another minute closer to losing the most important deal of his career. His pride told him to refuse this ridiculous suggestion, but his business instincts told him he was running out of options. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "But when this doesn't work, I want you and your mother out of this restaurant permanently, and I'll be speaking to the manager about proper supervision of staff children." Maya nodded calmly, understanding that she was putting both her mother's job and her own reputation on the line. But she also knew with mathematical certainty that she was right about Sophie's condition. "May I hold her, please?" Maya asked, extending her arms with practiced confidence. Marcus reluctantly handed over his daughter. His expression clearly showed that he expected this to be a complete failure that would only waste more time. But as soon as Maya took Sophie in her arms, everything changed. Maya adjusted the baby's position immediately, supporting her head and neck while relieving the pressure on her abdomen. She gently placed Sophie against her shoulder, supporting the baby's lower back with her palm while applying light, rhythmic pressure to help trapped gas move through the baby's system. Then Maya began to hum softly, a gentle melody that her own mother had sung to her when she was small. The combination of the correct physical position, the pressure relief, and the calming sound had an almost immediate effect. Sophie's desperate crying began to slow, then shifted to softer whimpering, and finally stopped altogether. Within less than 2 minutes, the baby was quiet and relaxed, her tiny body no longer tense with pain. The silence in the restaurant was deafening. Every customer, every waiter, and every member of Marcus's business party stared in complete amazement at the 12-year-old girl who had accomplished what expensive professionals could not. Sophie not only stopped crying, but actually seemed comfortable and content for the first time all evening. She looked up at Maya with clear, bright eyes and made a small sound that might have been a contented sigh. Dr. Mueller began to clap slowly, his face showing genuine admiration. "Remarkable," he said in his accented English. "Absolutely remarkable. In all my years as a parent and scientist, I have rarely seen such a clear demonstration of practical problem-solving skills." His colleagues nodded in agreement, equally impressed by what they had witnessed. Marcus stared at his daughter, who was now peaceful and calm in Maya's arms, and felt a mixture of relief, gratitude, and deep embarrassment. This child had solved in minutes what he had been struggling with for hours. "How did you—" he began, then stopped, not sure how to finish the question. Maya gently transferred Sophie back to Marcus, carefully maintaining the position that had worked so well. "It's really just a matter of observation and logic, sir. Babies communicate through crying, but they cry differently for different needs. Once you learn to recognize the patterns, it becomes much easier to identify solutions." She spoke as naturally as if she were explaining basic arithmetic, not demonstrating advanced knowledge of infant care. Angela had been watching from across the restaurant, her heart pounding with fear for her daughter and pride at Maya's courage. She approached the table carefully, expecting Marcus to follow through on his threat to have them both thrown out. Instead, she found him staring at Maya with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Your daughter," Marcus said slowly, looking at Angela with new eyes, "is quite extraordinary." The words seemed to surprise him as much as they surprised Angela. I owe you both an apology. My behavior tonight was inexcusable." His voice was quiet, humbled by the realization that he had nearly dismissed the very person who could help him. Dr. Mueller smiled warmly at Maya. "Young lady, that was the most impressive display of analytical thinking I have seen in quite some time. Tell me, what are you studying in school?" His scientific curiosity was clearly aroused by this remarkable child. Maya's eyes lit up at the question. "I'm currently working through advanced calculus and beginning quantum mechanics, sir. But my real interest is in behavioral psychology and systems analysis. I like to study how people interact and why they make the decisions they do." Her answer was matter-of-fact, as if discussing college-level subjects was perfectly normal for a 12-year-old. The German investors exchanged amazed glances. Dr. Mueller's company specialized in artificial intelligence and complex systems analysis. He recognized exceptional analytical ability when he saw it, regardless of the age or background of the person demonstrating it. "Have you ever considered a career in technology or scientific research?" he asked Maya seriously. Marcus watched this conversation with growing amazement. Not only had this remarkable child saved his business dinner, but she was now impressing his potential business partners with her intelligence and maturity. He felt ashamed of his earlier prejudice and desperate to make amends for his cruel behavior. "Maya," Marcus said, using her name for the first time, "I was wrong to dismiss you and disrespect your mother. You've shown me something very important tonight, and I hope you'll accept my sincere apology." His words were genuine, coming from a man who rarely apologized to anyone. Maya nodded graciously, showing maturity that impressed everyone at the table. "Thank you, Mr. Davidson. I understand that you were stressed about your daughter and your important business meeting. Sometimes people react badly when they feel overwhelmed, even when they don't mean to hurt others." Her forgiveness was so simple and sincere that Marcus felt even more ashamed of his earlier behavior. This child was not only brilliant, but also kind and understanding, qualities that his wealth and success had not taught him to value properly. Dr. Mueller had been thinking during this exchange, and now he made a decision that would change everything. "Mr. Davidson," he said formally, "my company would be very interested in not only proceeding with our original agreement, but also in establishing a scholarship program for exceptional young people like Maya. We believe that true innovation comes from recognizing talent wherever it exists, regardless of conventional expectations." Angela gasped in surprise. A scholarship program? For Maya? She had always known her daughter was special, but she had never imagined that Maya's abilities might open doors to opportunities like this. Marcus looked at his peaceful daughter, then at Maya, then at Angela, and made his own decision. "Dr. Mueller, I would like to contribute to that scholarship program as well. And Angela," he turned to Maya's mother, "I would like to offer you a position in my company's human resources department. We need people who understand that real value comes from character and ability, not from prejudice and assumptions." The evening that had started as Marcus's worst nightmare had transformed into something extraordinary. Sophie slept peacefully in his arms. The German deal was not only saved but expanded, and he had learned a lesson about judging people that would stay with him for the rest of his life. As the business dinner concluded successfully, Maya quietly returned to her homework table, opening her calculus book as if nothing unusual had happened. But Dr. Mueller stopped by her table before leaving the restaurant. "Maya," he said kindly, "I meant what I said about the scholarship program. Here's my card. Have your mother call my office next week. We would like to discuss your educational future." Maya accepted the card with a smile. "Thank you, Dr. Mueller. I'll make sure she calls you." As the German businessman walked away, Maya turned back to her mathematics problems, but her mind was already working on much bigger equations. She had just learned that sometimes the most important problems in life could be solved not with complex formulas, but with simple human kindness and the courage to speak up when others needed help. Angela finished her shift that night with tears of joy in her eyes. Her daughter had not only saved her job, but had opened doors to a future that Angela had only dared to dream about. As they walked home together, Maya carrying her textbooks and Angela carrying the business cards that represented new opportunities, they both understood that everything had changed. "Mom," Maya said quietly as they walked through quiet streets, "do you think Mr. Davidson really learned something tonight? Or do you think he'll go back to treating people badly once he forgets how scared he was?" Angela considered the question carefully. "I think some people can change when they realize they're wrong, honey. And I think seeing you help his baby showed him that good things can come from places he never expected to look." She squeezed her daughter's hand gently. "But the most important thing is that you did the right thing because it was right, not because of what you might get out of it." Maya nodded, understanding the deeper lesson her mother was teaching. The baby needed help, and I knew how to help her. That's all that really mattered. Her simple statement revealed a wisdom far beyond her years, the understanding that true intelligence is meaningless unless it's used to help others. 6 months later, Maya Rodriguez stood in the admissions office of the Stanford University Early Admission Program, signing papers for a full scholarship to study systems analysis and behavioral psychology. At 13, she would be the youngest student in the university's history, but her professors already knew from her entrance examinations that she had the intellectual capacity to handle the most challenging academic work. Dr. Mueller's company had not only provided the scholarship, but had also created an internship program that would allow Maya to apply her theoretical knowledge to real-world problems. Her first project would involve developing better communication systems for customer service interactions, using her understanding of human psychology to help companies treat all their customers with equal respect and dignity. Marcus Davidson kept his promise as well. Angela Rodriguez became the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Davidson Tech, where her job was to ensure that the company recognized and developed talent from all backgrounds. Her first major initiative was a program to identify gifted students from underprivileged communities and provide them with mentorship and educational opportunities. On Maya's first day at Stanford, she received a letter that made her smile. It was from a group of students at her old middle school, telling her that her story had inspired them to work harder in their studies and to speak up when they saw others being treated unfairly. "You showed us that being smart isn't something to hide," wrote one 12-year-old girl. "And you prove that standing up for what's right is always worth it, even when it's scary." Maya folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer next to her calculus textbook and her first published research paper on infant psychology. She had learned that night at Romano's restaurant that the most important equations in life weren't mathematical at all. They were human equations about treating others with dignity, recognizing talent wherever it exists, and having the courage to help when help is needed. As she began her first day of university classes, Maya carried with her the memory of baby Sophie's grateful smile and the knowledge that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change everything. She had solved a crying baby's problem with logic and compassion. But in doing so, she had also solved much bigger problems about prejudice, opportunity, and the power of not judging others by their appearance or age. The story of the billionaire's baby who cried in the restaurant had become something much more important. A story about how understanding, courage, and simple human decency can overcome even the deepest prejudices and create opportunities that change lives forever. And in her advanced psychology classes at Stanford, Maya would often think about that night and use it as a foundation for her research into how first impressions and social prejudices can blind people to the extraordinary potential that exists all around them, waiting only for someone brave enough to look beyond the surface and wise enough to listen when help is offered, no matter where that help comes from.